I was scrolling through a live stream chat the other day, just a standard lifestyle creator, and something about the energy felt strangely sterile. One viewer kept posting about how relieved he was that the platform had finally cleaned up the discourse, specifically celebrating the removal of those gritty analytical channels that discuss sexual strategy and evolutionary biology. He kept using the word safe, like a mantra, his digital tone radiating a sort of quiet, pampered satisfaction. To him, the disappearance of these aggressive narratives wasn't censorship. It was a long-awaited upgrade to a more evolved social space. But then I clicked on his profile. It was a meticulously curated gallery of filtered selfies, expensive skincare routines, and passive consumption. It immediately reminded me of the beautiful ones from John Calhoun's Universe 25 experiment. Those mice who, in an environment of total abundance and zero challenge, stopped competing, stopped mating, and spent their entire lives simply grooming themselves. They were peaceful, yes, but they were the heralds of a total societal collapse. That's when it clicked. This latest wave of community guidelines isn't about protecting feelings or stopping hate. It is the systematic construction of a genetic firewall. By pathologizing the language of objective value assessment, terms like fitness, strategy, or genetic selection, the system is effectively dismantling the male capacity to navigate reality. It is an attempt to force a blue pill logic of emotional compensation onto a population that is starting to see the raw mechanics of the machine. What's truly unsettling isn't just that these truths are being buried, but why? If the system can strip away your vocabulary for analyzing human nature, it doesn't just change how you talk, it changes how you think. It turns a sovereign individual into a social atom, isolated, passive, and perfectly primed for cognitive harvesting. We are witnessing a digital exile of biological truth, and the question isn't just how to speak it, but how to survive in a world that has legally mandated its own blindness.
Wow. That opening, it sets an incredibly high-stakes frame for this, almost philosophical.
It's a lot to take in.
It is. And just to be absolutely clear for you, the listener, those terms you just heard, the genetic firewall, objective value assessment, that's the very provocative language from the sources we're digging into today.
Exactly. They are framing this whole thing as a fundamental challenge, a kind of behavioral or even biological one.
Right. The assertion is that the system is built to suppress that, high-friction, truth-seeking behavior.
In favor of just passive consumption, which leads to that social atom you mentioned, just waiting to be harvested.
So, okay, our mission in this deep dive is to get past the provocation.
And get into the mechanics of it.
Exactly. We need to look at the mechanism. How do these systems we use every single day actively turn a sovereign individual into this social atom? And
more importantly, what can you do about it?
That's the crucial part. We need to extract the practical strategies, the ways you can establish personal, cognitive sovereignty, build that internal defense system.
So we're going to connect that metaphor of societal collapse from abundance,
the quiet, groomed failure of the mice.
Yes, to the modern crisis of, digital distraction and work that's all performance and no substance.
Okay, let's unpack it. Let's start with that core cognitive collapse. Because the analogy to Calhoun's mice, it's really potent.
It is. We have this total abundance of information, total comfort, but our ability to actually execute on anything long-term seems to be at an all-time low.
It really exposes how fragile it is to rely on just sheer motivation.
Yeah.
When you look at the actual data on unstructured self-improvement like New Year's resolutions, the failure rate is, it's shocking, but very informative.
Give us the number again. It's brutal.
Okay, so research consistently shows that a staggering 91% of New Year's resolutions fail.
91%?
By February, just think about that. That's not some fringe group. That's nearly everyone who starts the year with genuine intent.
That's not a failure of character. That's a statistical certainty. It has to be a failure of system design.
Exactly. It suggests that most people are trying to use raw willpower, which is a finite resource, to fight what's become an industrial war machine aimed right at their attention.
And that's the essential distinction, right? Yeah. We have to internalize that.
Yes. You are fighting an evolved battlefield. When we talk about digital distraction, this isn't, checking your email in 2014.
Right.
We are battling, and I'm quoting here, algorithmic dopamine machines designed by the smartest engineers in the world.
These aren't accidental time sinks. They are engineered.
Intentionally engineered systems. They leverage complex behavioral economics to keep you scrolling, clicking, reacting. Your willpower is just. It's a flimsy barrier against that kind of power.
And when you lose that battle, what you're designed to do, you internalize it as a personal failure. I'm weak. I lack discipline.
Right, but the sources suggest something else. that procrastination is often your brain succeeding at its biological mission.
Which is a really uncomfortable truth.
It is, but it's vital to escape that shame spiral. When you choose the distraction, your brain isn't failing. It's working exactly as its ancient hardware says it should. Its job is to conserve energy and seek immediate pleasure.
It's the path of least resistance.
Precisely. The brain is successfully conserving energy by avoiding the difficult, high-friction, long-term task. It's optimizing for now.
So the key insight here is you just cannot rely on motivation or willpower. The brain is constantly working against them for the sake of efficiency.
Exactly. Success requires flipping the script. You have to build external systems that make the right choice, the thing you want to do, the path of least resistance.
And make distraction the path of highest friction.
You have to engineer your environment to support you because your brain will always seek the easy way out.
And this whole idea of optimizing for ease and appearance, I mean, it applies perfectly to how we work today, especially in big companies.
Oh, absolutely.
You have these huge organizations supposedly built for deep strategic thinking, but all the internal rewards seem to push you in the exact opposite direction.
This is where that critique of cognitive distance comes in. You hear leaders complaining that, remote work killed the culture, that losing the hallway conversation killed innovation.
But that feels like nostalgia, right? A red herring.
It's a way to avoid addressing deeper organizational rot. I mean, think about it.
If you force everyone back into an office, but they all have headphones on and are just talking on Slack anyway, what problem did you actually solve?
Not at all. The real culture killer is that cognitive distance. It's the gap between the work people are forced to perform and the work that actually generates deep, non-obvious value.
The systems are optimized for appearance.
Above all else, they reward volume, speed, and polish. Did you send 3 emails or 1? Was the slide deck crisp?
It's not about value, thoughtfulness, or profundity anymore.
Which creates what the sources call elaborate theater, a workplace that's just optimized for looking busy. And think about what that theater means. Everyone is generating content that looks like work. It's polished, professional. Often it's an AI-mediated summary of data.
But no one's actually thinking. There's no real meeting of minds, no painful problem-solving happening.
Right. You can mandate physical proximity. But if all the communication is mediated by bots, or if everyone's just on their own parallel timeline of distraction, you've just moved the stupidity engine, as they call it, into the same building.
An illusion of collaboration, but no creative friction.
And the most insidious cost of this performance illusion is the death of institutional knowledge.
Because if you're always just generating fast, polished content to look busy, you're never actually creating or sharing the wisdom needed to run a complex organization.
Deep institutional knowledge, the context, the reason past decisions failed, the collective judgment that takes years to build, that's fundamentally human.
It requires synthesis, interpretation, telling stories.
Yes. And when communication is mediated, when we rely on an AI to read a summary of a summary, that authentic voice, it vanishes. The real culture is in the quirks, the shared language, the subtle ways of framing problems.
And if every document and email sounds like a corporate chatbot because people used AI to write it quickly,
then the culture and the institutional wisdom is dead. It doesn't matter if you're in the same room.
Which means we aren't just wasting time. We're paying this huge, invisible price in our inability to focus long enough to acquire or transmit that deep knowledge.
And this is where it gets really specific, because we have hard science on the measurable cost of this atomized attention.
Right, the context switching, checking your phone, answering an email, trying to get back to a complex task. It's not just a minor nuisance.
No, it is a quantifiable, catastrophic tax on your cognitive performance. Research from Microsoft and UC Irvine demonstrated the recovery cost is staggering.
You don't just pick up where you left off.
Not even close. Each significant interruption costs you up to 23 minutes and 15 seconds of recovery time.
23 and a half minutes. To recover from what might have been a 5-second distraction. That's an incredible sunk cost.
And let's break down what that recovery period actually is. When you switch tasks, your prefrontal cortex, your working memory, it has to unload the entire complex cache of the first task.
And then load the new one.
Exactly. And when you switch back, you spend those 23 minutes just rebuilding the context, the mental model, the data points, the thread of the argument you just lost.
So if you check your phone every 15 minutes, you are literally never doing deep work.
You're spending all your time in recovery mode just fighting to get back to where you were.
We should be framing that distraction not as some benign habit, but as a catastrophic loss of energy and intellectual capacity.
But the impact goes beyond just lost minutes. The constant switching actively makes us less intelligent in the moment.
This is the stupidity engine.
It is. A University of London study provided a stunning metric. They found that constant email and message checking reduces a person's effective IQ by 10 points.
10 points. That's a massive, immediate cognitive impairment.
And the researchers made a very provocative comparison to really emphasize the scale of that loss.
This is the part that always gets me.
They cited that this measurable 10-point reduction is more than the reduction in effective IQ caused by smoking marijuana.
Think about that. The cultural weight we put on avoiding one activity versus the complete societal acceptance of the other.
We willingly subject ourselves to a state of controlled cognitive impairment every single time a notification dings.
That comparison forces you to see it clearly. We treat the buzz of a notification as a minor irritant,
when we should be viewing it as an anti-performance tool, something that is actively sabotaging our ability to think complex thoughts.
It just underscores the central point here. The attention economy is a zero-sum game, and the cost of this perpetual atomization is profound intellectual decay.
You are sacrificing a measurable, significant portion of your cognitive capacity just to stay perpetually responsive.
Which moves us perfectly into why this erosion is happening, because, as we said, it's not an accident, it's rigorously engineered.
Yeah, let's pull that curtain back. We need to strip away any idea that this is some unintended side effect.
It is the core business model.
Absolutely. The sources confirm what behavioral scientists have been warning about for years. Large tech platforms intentionally hire specialists. They call them attention engineers.
And a lot of them are reformed slot machine designers, right?
That's the key. They're brought in to make these applications deeply, physiologically addictive. The goal is maximum time on site, because that equals maximum ad revenue.
Now, we're not just fighting an app, we're fighting a billion-dollar behavioral engineering department.
Using techniques identical to those used in gambling.
Variable reward schedules.
Right, the random distribution of likes or new content, so you never know when the next dopamine hit is coming. It compels you to keep checking.
Endless loops. Immediate social validation. It's a sophisticated psychological assault.
It is. Okay, so that's a brutal assessment. Given that we're fighting this asymmetric war against trillion-dollar companies, how can an individual possibly win?
We've established that willpower is symmetrical warfare, and we will lose that fight.
So the response has to be asymmetric. The source material is unequivocal on this. You beat them by not showing up to the battleground.
If the app is permanently deleted from your phone?
The variable reward schedule can't trigger. The push notification can't tempt you. The engineers have lost. The strategy is to engineer your environment so the battle is over before it even begins.
That's a radical shift. It moves the moral burden from I must be stronger to I must leave the arena and build a perimeter.
Exactly. Because if you stay in the arena, you're immediately subject to the next great challenge, which is the seductive appeal of speed, the promise of the quick fix over reliability.
You're talking about this trend of, what do you call it, vibe coding.
Yeah, vibe coding. It's this highly seductive, immediate appeal of just stitching things together. You know, AI output, no-code platforms like Zapier or Airtable to create custom infrastructure really, really fast.
It looks incredibly cheap and fast up front. The time tax, as you call it, isn't on the initial invoice.
Precisely. You feel like a genius because you built your MVP for $80 a month, counting only the API fees and subscriptions. But you haven't accounted for the astronomically high time tax of maintaining it.
You now own all the invisible problems of that stack.
All of them. Who's on call when it breaks at 3 a.m.?
You are.
Who's debugging the webhook when an API changes without notice? You are. Who's managing the custom authentication that might not be secure or compliant? You are.
And all that support takes dramatically more time and cognitive load than just using a robust, tested SaaS solution.
And then you hit the inevitable crisis moment, the scale wall.
This is where it all comes crashing down.
The scale wall is the point where these shortcut systems just collapse catastrophically. They reveal their foundational fragility. Your clever, vibe-coded solution suddenly isn't so clever.
Your free tier API quota maxes out during your first big traffic spike.
Your Airtable base hits its record limit at the moment of peak signups. Your endpoints start timing out because they weren't designed for concurrent requests. Everything is on fire at the worst possible moment.
The moment reliability matters most, the fragile system fails.
Which reinforces the core meta lesson. Reliability is what customers are truly buying. And profound, lasting work requires stable, non-fragile foundations.
And those foundations come from boring, tested, production-grade systems, not from novelty or speed.
Right. The anti-truth system rewards the illusion of speed while punishing you with catastrophic fragility later.
That systemic flaw valuing speed over stability perfectly illustrates the fragility built into so many modern digital enterprises, which loops us back to authentic communication.
The failure to prioritize stable foundations extends directly to how organizations define work. We've reached a point where we are actively confusing perpetual communication with actual productivity.
We have to reassert the necessity for actual thinking. Deep analysis, genuine synthesis, original insight. These things are high friction. They can't be rushed or automated or done while multitasking.
And that kind of thinking mandates that people cannot be constantly responsive. If you have to check your messages every 5 minutes, your recovery clock is constantly resetting. You are cognitively incapable of deep analysis.
The system has destroyed your capacity for the very work it claims to reward.
So the proper role of automation, and AI specifically, has to be carefully defined, or it just becomes another part of the stupidity engine.
Its proper role is augmentation, not replacement.
It should handle routine tasks, scheduling, summarizing data, writing first drafts, freeing up humans to focus on higher order, non-routine thinking. That's augmentation.
But the current trend is the inverse.
It is. We have AI output being routed to other people's AI. It creates this closed loop of generic, ambiguous, and ultimately meaningless communication.
Nobody is thinking. They're just managing a flow of automated mediocrity.
That image, a cycle of automated mediocrity where no true insight can form, it's terrifying.
So if we accept that the digital world is engineered to pull us into these atomized, fragile, mediocre loops, then the fight for cognitive sovereignty has to involve establishing some radical personal protocols to fight back.
This is where we get practical. And this is perhaps the single most powerful strategy available. It's called the monk mode protocol.
And it's not a mindset, right? It's strategy.
It is an intentional high-friction strategy for deep work that dramatically alters your environment for a set non-negotiable period.
So it's a commitment to radical, temporary isolation and dedicated focus. How long does this usually last? And what are the non-negotiables?
You define a clear, sustainable period. It could be one full day per week, say every Thursday is monk mode day, or a dedicated week per month.
And during that period?
The implementation has to be radical.
Yeah.
You immediately delete all social media apps from your phone. Not just hide them, delete them.
Okay.
You turn off all email and Slack notifications. And crucially, you set an autoresponder.
The autoresponder is a powerful tool. It manages external expectations.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It prevents that cognitive tax of constantly having to explain why you're not responding. It leverages the system to reinforce your new boundary. You use a mechanism of responsiveness to enforce non-responsiveness.
It eliminates that internal pressure, that FOMO.
It does, but then how do you maintain that focus? It's hard to go from hyperstimulation to zero without some kind of fallback.
Right.
So to make it sustainable, you introduce psychological friction through gamification. Apps like Forest.
The virtual tree.
Yeah. It gamifies focus time. It ties your work session to the growth of a virtual tree. If you give in to temptation and leave the app to check something else, you kill the tree.
That seems like a small trick, but it's surprisingly effective.
It is, because it leverages the brain's natural aversion to seeing a process fail. It gives your intention an external, visible cost.
Okay, so we've established willpower is broken. Monk mode introduces friction. The core insight must be, make it easy to start work and incredibly hard to access distractions.
This is the principle of friction in practice. And the modern arsenal has evolved. The most effective tool right now, because it attacks the brain's reward centers directly, is remarkably simple: Grayscale mode.
This sounds so counterintuitive. Why make your $1,000 smartphone look like a black and white newspaper?
Because of the neuroscience of color and reward. Color directly stimulates the brain's reward centers. When your screen is vibrant, the red notification badge, the blue social media logo, it triggers a dopamine response.
It makes the digital world appealing just to look at.
Exactly. Switching your phone to grayscale, which you can do in accessibility settings, instantly makes the digital world visually unappealing. The functionality is still there, but the device becomes boring.
So you dull the sensory experience to reduce the dopamine reward.
It's a subtle, permanent way to reduce the inherent addictive quality of the device without deleting necessary tools like Maps or your banking app.
What about those physical and network blocking techniques to really reinforce the boundary?
Let's start with physical friction. First, remove all social media and time-wasting apps from your phone's home screen. Put them deep inside a folder.
So you have to search for it.
Yes. When that automatic urge to check hits, you have to manually search for the app. That mandatory 3-second delay, that moment of conscious choice, is often enough to break the automatic habit loop.
It interrupts the unconscious cycle.
It does. But the gold standard for comprehensive distraction management is network friction, blocking distractions at the router level.
You're talking about tools like Pi-hole or NextDNS.
Exactly. They operate as DNS sinkholes. So when a device in your network asks for the IP address for, say, Instagram, the sinkhole intercepts the request and returns a blank.
Meaning the site just doesn't load on any device.
Correct. It makes the choice to use that distracting site physically impossible for everyone on your network during defined work hours. It's extreme, but it's absolutely effective because you remove temptation at the source.
So these tools fight the external engineering, but we also have to rewire the internal reward systems that have been hijacked. That's where the dopamine detox comes in.
And not as a fad, but as a practical neurological reset. The concept is grounded in neurology. Constant, cheap, immediate stimulation, social media, junk food, video games, it downregulates your brain's dopamine receptors.
You need more and more stimulation just to feel the same baseline reward.
The detox is simply a structured period of lower stimulation to let those receptors upregulate, to reset.
Which means we become more sensitive again. Activities that are usually boring, like deep work or reading, start to feel rewarding again. How do we apply this practically?
The practical application is choosing one defined day per week, a weekly ritual, to avoid all digital entertainment.
Zero phone, no TV, no streaming.
No music with lyrics, no browsing. You focus solely on low-stimulation activities, physical books, long walks, face-to-face conversation, or just sitting and thinking.
It will feel uncomfortable at first.
It will feel very uncomfortable, boring, maybe irritating, but that discomfort is the transformative period where your receptors reset and you rebuild your tolerance for sustained focus.
And the final piece of this internal rewiring, the actual mechanism for successful behavioral change, moving from a vague goal to a concrete protocol, the implementation intention framework.
This is neuroscience-backed goal setting. It leverages the brain's craving for completion instead of a weak intention like, I won't check Instagram today, which has no trigger.
You use the rigid, predefined when-then formula?
It seems like a small change, but it's a massive psychological difference. The brain struggles with denial. It doesn't like the void of don't do X.
So the implementation intention provides a replacement behavior.
Exactly. You structure it as, when trigger X occurs, then I will perform action Y. For example, when I feel the urge to check Twitter due to stress, I will instead immediately stand up and do 10 push-ups.
So you're not denying the craving. You're replacing the undesirable behavior with a specific, physical, measurable alternative.
Which provides immediate completion and a dose of positive physical reinforcement. Or another common one. When I open my web browser for the first time in the morning, I will immediately navigate to my prioritized task list, not my email.
You give your brain a new, predetermined track to run on when the habitual trigger fires. You make the correct action the path of least resistance.
So we've established the individual protocols for defense. But these principles, clarity, structure, anti-fragility, they have to be applied to the systems we build too, both technically and intellectually.
Right. If the external world is moving toward ambiguity and fragility, we have to build our internal systems based on rigor.
Which brings us to a crucial technical analogy from software development, the design principles of a proposed language enhancement called Type Ruby.
Okay, so we're using a technical concept as a metaphor for intellectual clarity.
It's a powerful one.
Break that down for us. How does trying to add static typing to a flexible, dynamic language like Ruby, how does that model the fight against digital ambiguity and vibe coding?
Because the core challenge of modern information, especially AI-generated content, is pervasive ambiguity. Dynamic languages like Ruby prioritize speed and flexibility, but sometimes that comes at the cost of clarity and stability.
So Type Ruby is an effort to enforce clarity without destroying the original flexibility.
That is the goal. And its design principles are a perfect model for intellectual clarity. First, Types are optional everywhere.
Which is crucial.
It allows for gradual typing, meaning you only enforce strict definition and clarity where it's absolutely needed. In critical business logic, for example, you don't force rigid structure where creative flexibility is better.
So intellectually, this means we define our core concepts rigorously, but we allow for abstract thought in the creative process.
Precisely. Define your anchors, but let the connective tissue be flexible. Second, types are inline and native. The syntax feels natural, not like something bolted on. This means structural clarity is integrated into the thought process itself, not an afterthought.
And the third principle is the most fascinating one from a systems perspective.
It's the coexistence of types. Generic types, duck typing, which is Ruby's flexible nature, and static typing should all coexist and cooperate.
Which models a highly sophisticated intellectual approach.
Yes, we have to structure our thought, which is the static typing, without losing the necessary flexibility, the duck typing, needed for genuine creative problem solving. It rejects the simple extremes of everything is chaos or everything must be rigidly defined.
It's the intellectual counter to the ambient ambiguity of the digital exile.
And we see the same demand for rigor and anti-fragility in decentralized financial systems.
Right, the architecture of a decentralized credit card system on a blockchain. It's a fantastic real-world example of designing for trustlessness and resilience.
It moves complexity and risk away from human trust and into immutable code structure. It forces accountability by design. This system, it's not just one smart contract, it's 5 distinct interlocking contracts.
Okay, let's run through them to see how that multi-layered approach creates resilience.
First, you have the credit facility contract. It manages the master pool of capital, the global credit line. Second, the card manager contract handles administration issuing cards, activation, suspension.
Simple enough.
Third is the spending limits contract, which enforces encrypted, user-defined rules, a programmable boundary. Fourth, the payment processor, which orchestrates the transaction flow.
That's already complex, but where does the true anti-fragility and accountability come in?
That's the fifth contract, the multi-signance contract. This is designed to handle high-value, sensitive transactions or system changes. It requires consensus, not a single point of failure.
Explain how that multi-signature approval actually works in practice to enforce security.
It's all about distributed accountability. For high-value actions, like changing a system parameter or unlocking a lot of capital actions that would need just one CEO signature in a traditional system.
Right.
The multi-sig contract requires multi-signature approval for master accounts.
Right.
So to execute a major action, you need a pre-configured number of key holders, say 3 out of 5 or 5 out of 7, to all sign off digitally.
So a single bad actor can't unilaterally drain the facility, and a single catastrophic error can't be implemented without oversight.
It is deliberate friction that mandates consensus. The system can't break easily because accountability is distributed and enforced by code, not human policy.
It's a robust, complex architecture where security is achieved through overlapping layers of verifiable processes, the complete opposite of a fragile, vibe-coded system.
And that architecture, whether it's in finance or in your personal cognition, proves that anti-fragility requires rigor, friction, and defined boundaries.
We started with a pretty bleak picture, the digital exile leading to these atomized, groomed individuals. But we've moved through the mechanisms of that collapse and landed on a blueprint for fighting back.
And the key takeaway is to fundamentally recalibrate your expectations about progress. The goal is not to stop wasting time entirely. That's an impossible perfectionist trap.
The goal is to make sure bad days, unproductive days, are the exception, not the rule.
Right. The difference between a high performer and a chronic procrastinator isn't willpower. It's having robust systems that catch you when you fall.
That's the beauty of the compounding effect applied to intentional friction. It's not about finding motivation, which fades. It's about building systems that pay dividends for life.
Absolutely. Every good system you build now, monk mode, grayscale, network blocking, your when-then intentions, makes your future self fundamentally more focused, more productive, and less susceptible to these cognitive harvesting systems.
It's an investment in your future cognitive freedom.
And that future starts now. Not on some mythical January 1st or a Monday morning, but in the decision to implement these friction-based tools today.
So to sum this all up, we've established that the digital world is engineered specifically for atomization, distraction, and the erosion of deep, nuanced thought. It is trying to render us as social atoms primed for cognitive harvesting.
But the architecture of freedom is built on deliberate friction and clarity. The tools for building individual anti-fragility are immediate and available, centered on radical protocols like monk mode and environmental controls like Grayscale and DNS blocking.
And systemically, we counter ambiguity with rigor. We fight the fragility of vibe coding by insisting on uncompromising clarity and structured definition.
Whether that's in our language systems, as modeled by Type Ruby, or in our governance models, as enforced by decentralized multi-signature contracts.
The key is shifting your energy from self-blame, that willpower trapped to focused, immediate system building.
By creating systems that enforce accountability and clarity, you secure your capacity for genuine insight and sovereign thought, ensuring you are not one of the beautiful ones, passively awaiting cognitive collapse.